I want to welcome you to Healthy People, Healthy Ecosystems, results from a public-private partnership with the Democratic Republic of Congo, Kenya, and Nepal. I'm Sandeepa Thala. I am a new program associate with the Environmental Change and Security Program here at the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars. For those of you who don't know, the Environmental Change and Security Program is 17 years old. We look at the various connections between health, environment, livelihoods, population, security. Today's event is brought to you under a HELPS project, which incidentally stands for Health, Environment, Livelihoods, Population, and Security. And it's a 5-year initiative to learn more about these connections, and it's generously funded by the USAID's Office of Population and Reproductive Health. I see a lot of familiar faces in the crowd, so I think many of you already know that the Wilson Center is a living memorial to our 28th president, who is the only president at this point who has achieved a PhD. And here at the Wilson Center, we aim to bring the worlds of policy, practice, and academia together to gain a better understanding from each other. Before I direct you to our two first speakers, which include Scott Radloff, who's the director of the Office of Population and Reproductive Health at USAID, and Tom Dillon, who's the senior vice president for field programs at WWF in the U.S. I want to first show a short video message from Shannon D'Ignacio, the vice president of corporate contributions at Johnson & Johnson. New Mac users.
Johnson & Johnson has focused its social responsibility efforts on programs intended to make life-changing long-term differences in human health. Our 3 strategic pillars within this mission are saving and improving the lives of women and children, building the skills of those who serve community health needs, and preventing disease and reducing stigma. Science and experience have shown us that healthy people and healthy environments go hand in hand, that biodiversity is necessary for humans to thrive and prosper. For this reason, we have been longtime supporters of the World Wildlife Fund in a variety of successful efforts that address species preservation, carbon reduction, and habitat conservation. We have found that the World Wildlife Fund has a remarkable ability to rally diverse organizations to a common cause, as is the case with the Global Development Alliance between Johnson & Johnson and USAID that made this Population Health and Environment Alliance possible. 3 years ago, I was happy to sign the Memorandum of Understanding that committed our corporation to a formal partnership with World Wildlife Fund and USAID's Office of Population and Reproductive Health. Through this partnership, people in Nepal, Kenya, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo were empowered to conserve and manage the natural resources that they and local wildlife depend on. I truly wish I could be with you personally today to celebrate the conclusion of that commitment and to hear firsthand of its results. Let me close by recognizing Tom Dillon of World Wildlife Fund and Scott Radloff of USAID's Office of Population and Reproductive Health. The spirit of partnership your respective organizations have displayed is sincerely appreciated. I also thank our Johnson & Johnson colleague, Conrad Person, for his leadership. Certainly there is much to celebrate. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
Good afternoon. So I'm very pleased to be here today as we commemorate the past 3 years of cooperation between our office, the Office of Population and Reproductive Health, with Johnson & Johnson and the World Wildlife Federation. I'm very happy to see Tom Dillon here today from World Wildlife and Conrad Person from Johnson & Johnson. The three of us were together almost 3 years ago to the day when we launched this alliance. And so I'm happy to be here today and to learn about what we have achieved over these past 3 years. In a number of respects, this alliance was ahead of its time. It was announced or launched back October 8th, 2008, which was 7 months prior to President Obama's announcement of the Global Health Initiative. And in many respects, this alliance supports the goals and principles of the Global Health Initiative. Under the Global Health Initiative, there was elevated priority given to family planning and maternal child health. And this alliance is focused on those two health areas and linking them with environment and conservation activities. Under the Global Health Initiative, there's an emphasis on partnership. And this includes partnerships between donors and governments, country governments, between donors, and between donors and the private sector, what we call public-private partnerships. So this is a perfect example of a public-private partnership. And it was the first public-private partnership that our office has launched in its history. So again, it was ahead of its time in that respect. Third, the Global Health Initiative has a focus on integration, promoting integration between health activities. So we have a long experience of linking family planning with maternal child health, but a fairly short experience on linking it and integrating it with conservation and environment activities. So in that respect, this is a important innovation and learning opportunity for us. Back in 2002, our Congress directed us in our appropriations legislation to focus attention of our family planning programs on areas where population growth are threatening biodiversity. And we've had that directive in our legislation ever since 2002. And so we've been searching for models of integrating these program areas over that time. And this is one example of that. And finally, under the Global Health Initiative, there's a focus on innovation. And as I said, we have experience integrating different parts of our health programs, but fairly limited on integrating with environment conservation activities. So we are plowing new ground as we do this work, looking for models that can effectively tap the synergies between these program areas. So there's a lot of learning to be done, and this afternoon we're going to have an opportunity to hear what's been achieved and what we've learned that can help us plan for effective future integration in this area. So again, thank you all for coming, and thank you all who are about to present to us. We look forward to your presentations. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom?
Hi, I'm Tom Dillon from the World Wildlife Fund. Good afternoon. I'd like to thank the Woodrow Wilson Center for hosting this event today. I'd also like to thank Johnson & Johnson and USAID for joining in this partnership with the World Wildlife Fund. And I also remember the event 3 years ago quite well, where we signed the agreement and kicked this off. And I can't believe, of course, that it's been so long. Fortunately, a lot has been accomplished in the past 3 years, as we will hear about today. You know, a lot of people probably don't think that an organization with the name World Wildlife Fund would have a program on population health and the environment. But actually, it's the most natural of things for us, in my opinion. The mission of our organization officially is stated promoting harmony between humans and nature. And that the work we do, we try and ensure benefits both people and the natural environment. Most of the people we work with are in rural areas, and they depend on their natural resources for their own livelihoods and for their own well-being. And of course, if you're in that situation, you, in order to be a steward of the environment, you've got to have the basics. You've got to have your own health. The first thing for all of us, whether we live in urban areas like most of us here today, or in really rural, remote areas, is your own health, the health of your children, of your family. That's the number one foundation. And all decisions were made after that about how you're going to interact with others, how you're going to interact with the natural world, with the environment. And many of the places where we work, people don't have health services. And such as in a number of the places you're going to hear about today. There are areas where even the humanitarian groups might not be present. And the reason for that is that they're often places that don't have a lot of people. They have people, but they're not the centers of population. And so these are people who are often living in a really marginal way in terms of the economy. They may be in a marginalized situation in terms of their own health as well. And so World Wildlife Fund is committed to healthy communities and a healthy environment. Just a few hours ago, I was in a different part of USAID, actually, talking about with EGAT, and a couple of the people are in the room today and or right now. And I was remarking to the new head of EGAT that there's a program that World Wildlife Fund works on with a couple of the other large NGOs in the Coral Triangle, which is based around Indonesia. It's where the greatest concentration of corals are. And one of the main activities we're doing there is helping communities set aside their own reserves, their own protected areas. And they're for the benefit of the communities and the global environment. In Wakatobi, where I was recently, which is a set of small islands off of Indonesia, the communities have set aside their own reserves. Can you hear me? Yeah, I'm probably loud enough, even with a hoarse throat. Were telling me that since they've set aside their reserve, they have more fish. Also, they have tourists who are coming to see the reefs that are now being protected through their no-take zones. And we, along with the Nature Conservancy and Conservation International, and using USAID funds, are measuring what is the health impact of these no-take zones off of the coast of Papua New Guinea and Indonesia and these other places around the Coral Triangle. What are the social indicators that are moved? Do people have more protein? Are their kids able to spend more days at school each year? Are the families wealthier? And these are the kinds of indicators that an organization that is serious about the environment, like our own, has got to be paying attention to if we are going to move forward with a sustainable society in many of these rural and remote areas where we work. And a lot of what we'll hear about today, it's not Indonesia, that's why I decided to say something about it, but it's other countries. But I do want to say something about one of the places where that's going to be discussed today. In Nepal, and I've been to the villages that are part of this program since we signed this 3 years ago. And villages that are in the southern part of Nepal, which is called the Terai, which is a subtropical forest that India and Nepal share. World Wildlife Fund's been working in this area for a long time because it's got some of the best concentrations of wildlife. That was our original reason for being there, was tigers, rhinos, elephants, one of the fastest rates of deforestation in the world. And there are some wonderful national parks there that we have been supporting for decades. But about 10 years ago, we started working outside of the protected areas, realizing not only there, but we do this in most parts of the world now, that that actually is much more important for us not only to be involved in the protected areas, but to be in the matrices, to be in the where the people are, where there's some natural habitat left or natural forest, but where a fair amount of it's gone as well. And it's important for a lot of reasons, one of which is those who are changing the environment, of course, are the people who live there, and so we need to be engaged in a positive way with them. Also, we need to be doing what we can to help them with their own interests and their own needs. And so we've been engaged in a reforestation program between all of the protected areas of this terai. One of the main conservation reasons is that this relinks the protected areas and thereby allows a species like a tiger, which is one of the most endangered mammals in the world, to actually go between these protected areas, to go into the forests, community forests that are managed and owned. Well, the land isn't owned, interestingly, but the rights to the forest is owned by the communities. To go through these community forests, not often enough to be hanging out there all the time and scaring the hell out of people, but to be dispersing occasionally through there. So there's a gene connection, so there can be a viable population of tigers into the future. And this is occurring through the efforts of communities. They're the ones who are bringing back these forests through their own community forest efforts. One of the main ways in which that is being done and that has been supported through this program we're discussing today is an innovation called biogas. It's a very simple technology that uses the dung of domesticated animals or of humans as well to make gas that can be used in cooking and can be used for other purposes. And thereby, you don't need to be using wood. And in a country like Nepal, which has a much larger population per square mile or kilometer than the other countries we're talking about today, that's incredibly important because one of the main causes of deforestation is indeed the use of wood for cook stoves. There are a lot of other benefits, though, and not long ago when I was in the Terai in a village, I was meeting with a woman who is the head of her family, and she was explaining to me, well, what the benefits of having access to health services through a conservation project, of having biogas as a technology that she can use, which is simple, of having anyway, let me go on. And she was saying, my children now have more time with me. And the reason is because she doesn't have to go as far to get her wood. That they're not coughing anymore because previously, before she was using wood, there was a lot of fumes and smoke. And it was causing her and her children respiratory problems. Also, she can decide for herself her own family planning. She has access to people who are giving her advice, discussing family planning. There's a group in her village that actually provides each other peer advice. So there are multiple levels in which she feels empowered. I could see it in her face that she was not I think not saying this for the foreigner who's coming, who's obviously associated with the money, but and I wanted to tell that personal story because for me that's what conservation is about, is that she's living on the edge of a national park that used to be the name of the village is Sweet Forest, but I'll tell you there's no forest there except for what's come up in the past few years, and that they are tending now. Meaning the forest was gone, they had used it up, and it had disappeared, and it was not going to come back. And through the efforts of a conservation project that is integrated into the needs of the well-being of the communities, in fact, it's being reforested, her health and her family's health are improved, and we can make measurable impact on both humans and the environment. That was also I won't talk much longer because the real experts are here, but I'll say one last thing, which is that I think that these kinds of activities should be built into all conservation projects. I think it's obvious probably to everybody in this room. It's something that's not completely understood in the conservation movement, though. And so, I think those of us who do have that understanding or have seen it need to talk more about it, need to show the evidence for these connections, and push for more integration, actually. I know a lot of people in the health sector aren't necessarily aware of how conservation environmental activities can be precautionary before you have to wait until health problems are more serious. And so it's not only talking to people in the environment sector, obviously it's talking to people in other sectors and trying to make these interconnections. And anyway, I'm delighted to have been involved in this. And it is certainly the intention of World Wildlife Fund to continue to integrate health issues into our conservation efforts, and to recommend that to the other environmental entities that are out there. And we are very honored to have been a part of a partnership that includes both the U.S. government and one of the largest, most important corporations in the health sector in the world. So Conrad, thank you very much. And Scott, thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. That was... Thank you, Tom. I'm just going to take a few moments because we've been thanking all around the room, but actually you can't thank too much in situations like this. Conrad, it's just been a real pleasure working with you. Conrad was here in the beginning. He continues to support us. I also would like to bring notice to a couple other donors who are sitting in the audience. Gloria Coe is our technical officer from USAID. And and her predecessor, Heather Dagnes, who I know is here. Heather was here at the beginning, and Heather was very responsible for the whole startup of this partnership, and she supported us and guided us throughout her tenure. So I'm glad to see you here, Heather. And of course, thank you to everyone who took time out of your busy days to be here with us. We appreciate it a lot. So my job is to summarize for you the goal and objectives of this PHE Alliance so that you have a context within which to understand the presentations that are going to come. And I'm also going to be acting as the presenter for the Congo results, the Congo project, because our field coordinator, Dr. Didier Mazango, is not able to be with us here today. So before I do that, I just have a couple of minutes to add my own personal spin to what we're going to talk about today. My career is in international development, and I've spent most of my time working in public health. I took on this job for two reasons. First, it has a great focus on community-based family planning and health, which has always been my passion. And secondly, it gave me a chance to work with my favorite conservation organization. But frankly, after 2 decades in the field and working in this area, I wasn't expecting many surprises. I couldn't have been more wrong in my expectations in this regard. In fact, I could say that these 3 years have changed almost everything about the way I now view health development and the challenges it brings, and this is health development writ large. I've long called myself a conservationist, but now I say to my international health colleagues, we are all conservationists, and if we aren't, we should be. Tom and I did not coordinate our remarks here, but what I want to say is that there is this link between health and conservation. And this project forced me to look for those linkages between human health and environmental health. It forced me to identify them, to quantify them if possible, but just looking for them actually made me see them. And when that happened, those were the aha moments of my job. So here's just one example. In Kenya, on the coast, fishermen use boats and large nets, and women do not work the boats, but women catch fish, or else they otherwise obtain them, and then they sell them. And they sell them and they keep the money. And so we all know that when women do this, a very likely outcome is that the health of their children improves. But conservationists tell us that the kind of fish that women are catching, the very small fish, if this goes on, we can deplete the fishing stocks. And this is because we're not giving the fish a long enough time to mature in the sea and reproduce. So what seems to be like a good thing from a health perspective actually might not be. It actually is probably working against the long-term interests of the women themselves, and that is the health of their children. So my takeaway line from this is that human health cannot be separated from environmental health anywhere, but most especially when we're working with very poor people who live very close to nature. And I think you'll see that in some of the presentations to follow, and hopefully in mine. Okay, so back to the program. Here we are. This is our goal, as you can all read: promote biodiversity conservation, population health outcomes, using our integrated approaches, evidence-based approaches, in 3 countries that are in WWF priority conservation places, in the Democratic Republic of Congo, Kenya, and Nepal. The objectives flow: improve family health, reduce barriers to voluntary family planning and reproductive health services, improve the community's management of natural resources and habitat conservation, and 4th, document and promote successful approaches. So we're going to start with, this is very important. Okay. So we're going to start with the Democratic Republic of Congo. It truly is a place on the frontier. This is what it looks like flying over the wet tropical forests from Kinshasa to our project site. Unlike the other 2 country projects that you will hear about, this program was a first start for PHE. Nothing had been there before our project. Okay. This is, we don't have a total map of the continent, but this is the heart of Africa up in the upper part of the screen. In the lower part, you see the outlines of the Salonga Park, National Park. Our project was in the corridor between the 2 halves of the Salonga Park. And you can see that, as I say, in the inset. Among other endangered wildlife that the Salonga shelters is the bonobo, one of the world's 4 great apes and our closest non-human relative. It is also home to 150,000 of the world's poorest people, whose human needs are not only being ignored by their own government, but also by international development agencies who are working on the eastern side of the Congo where there's open conflict. So in this part of the Congo, in the country, in Equator Province, ours is the only development assistance program. Kylie, can I just ask you, how do I scroll this? Excuse me just one moment. Just with that, okay. All right, sorry. Oh, okay. No, it's stuck.
You can just like this.
No, but I just want to go to the next one.
You want to go to the next slide?
That's what I pressed. Ah, okay. Okay. Excuse me. You really only have 2 options to travel to the corridor from Kinshasa, the capital. It's either a month-long trip up the Congo and right on the Luilaka, or bush plane. We took the bush plane. You can see us landing here. This is the landing strip, and the beginning of the crowds of children. There are many, many more who are very eager to greet you when you arrive. Through our own surveys, through the project, and those of others, we soon found out the magnitude of the problems that our project was going to face in this area. As you can see, people did not have access to untreated drinking water. Secondly, 10% of children died before the age of 5, and 16% of children under 5 suffer from acute malnutrition, severe acute malnutrition. There was no family planning available at all, and nobody used family planning. This not only leads to the obvious problems of children being born too early and being spaced too closely, but also rampant sexually transmitted infections, as reported to us by the local Ministry of Health at the zone. In the area, there are high levels of infectious diseases, notably malaria and monkeypox. Monkeypox is contracted by frequent human-animal conflict, although the exact etiology is still undetermined, and the Centers for Disease Control is in the area trying to study what this disease actually looks like. This area has also experienced outbreaks of Ebola. What you see here are packages of monkeys being hauled out of the forest for trade. Okay, these random, well, not random, but these statistics of poor health. Some of the major reasons for this is, number one, this is a very isolated area. What you see here is what is known as an axis in the corridor. There are no roads as we understand them in any other place. Motorcycles and bicycles can make their way through the corridor, but when you come to the many rivers and streams, this is what you have to do. You gather someone's assistance to move the motorcycle across the river, and then you continue on your way. Obviously, moving around the corridor is very difficult. It takes lots of planning, and it's never done leisurely. It's never done without lots of planning and backup. So 80% of the population in the country earn less than $2 a day. And we are working in a province, Equator Province, which is the poorest province in the country. So an average of $2 a day doesn't really apply to most of the people in our province. Neither are there sustainable livelihoods for the people to depend upon. During colonial times, this area and areas around there were palm oil plantations. So people had housing, jobs provided by employers. But shortly after independence in the 60s, these plantations went away, and people were left with living off the land. So it's fishing, it's bushmeat hunting, it's slash and burn agriculture, none of which are sustainable. Also, there are no health services to speak of in the area. This is a clinic, and that's a bed in the clinic in the inset. These facilities are there for people to go to, and there usually is some worker in the facility, but these people have not been trained. Many of them are not really official health workers, and there are no medicines. There are no supplies, and as I said before, families are very large because there's no way to do family planning, no way to space. Pregnancy starts in adolescence. Okay, whoops, I'm not doing this as well as I should. Okay, so these are the problems, these are the major problems, and now I'm going to go to what we were able to do in the time that we were working in this area to try to address these problems. So this is Dr. Didier, by the way, Didier Mazongo. He is a trainer, and Dr. Didier led training teams that included national government and provincial trainers, as well as trainers from the Institute for Reproductive Health in Kinshasa. The project trained all 35 health staff that worked in the general hospital and the 12 health facilities. These were the facilities included in our project area. as well as 135 voluntary community health workers in family planning and maternal and child health care. When we started the project, we had 80 voluntary health workers that had been traditionally there. They were all male except for one female. Today, there are 135 voluntary community health workers, and 55 of them are females. This is the first class of villagers trained. So they all have this T-shirt on, but there are women in there as well as men. With Johnson & Johnson's funds, the project simultaneously launched activities to properly site and build improved water sources in 10 locations throughout the project area, to be first as near as possible to the health facilities, but also to include as many households as possible. Local labor, as you see here, is used to build the water sources, and village health committees were resuscitated because they had been in existence previously, and reorganized and trained to maintain them and to monitor their use. So this is a water source in the process of being built. When it's done, it's covered at the top. It taps the running stream, so just very shallowly underneath the ground. And what comes out of this is fresh drinking water, which we drink when we go there. This is the maternity that is in the central village, also called Mankoto, that's right next to the general hospital. With Johnson & Johnson funds, the project used local labor to improve the hospital's maternity ward, general surgery theater, water supply system, and to rebuild 2 maternal referral centers by women living at farther distances. So we have 2 of them out on the different axes where women who need emergency care, need care with birthing and postnatal care, will be able to go. I just can't. No, I'm sorry. I keep doing this. I don't really know how to scroll this thing down. Is that, yeah, it's not scrolling. Okay. Okay. In addition, very importantly, Johnson & Johnson made an additional donation of equipment and supplies to this project area. And this major donation included such equipment as maternity beds, exam tables, baby scales, and a solar-powered refrigerator to keep the vaccines cold. So this is very much appreciated and now constitutes the sum total of the equipment that we have in the quarter for meeting. Now what do you have to do? Okay. You see 2 characters there. But these are actually mothers groups. We formed 27 mothers groups in order to reverse and prevent child malnutrition. We formed these mothers groups to learn about proper nutrition and feeding practices in order to teach them about proper feeding, nutrition, even breastfeeding practices. The local health workers that we train, the village health workers, facilitate these groups where the mothers cook together and experiment with new foods and traditional recipes, foods that are more nutritious, and also that we talk to them about the feeding frequency. Mothers were also encouraged, because WWF has in this area a long-standing program. Mothers were encouraged to take part in WWF's livelihood program to improve cultivation techniques, to improve their own food production in a sustainable way, and to earn a little extra at the market where they can trade their foodstuffs for others. So overall, major results here. We have 307 new family planning users a month, and this is 1 year after doing the training and after distributing the contraceptives. 307 new family planning users a month for a total after the first year of 4,000. There was a 20% increase in access to improved water sources by households. Because we sited the water sources closer to the health centers, we have 70% of all the health centers now have access to improved water source. And this also includes the hospital. And in an area, an intervention area where we had both improved water sources and we were talking to the people about use of water, proper storage and handling techniques. versus an area where that wasn't happening. Within a 3-month period, we saw a 50% decrease in diarrhea cases. So this is a little test case to show what's possible. And I had one more thing. Okay. I didn't mention, because I'm not scrolling these things down properly, in the previous slide, that the project also produced films, educational films, for the villagers in the local Lingala language, using a partner of WWF's in this part of the world called INSEF, International Educational and Training Foundation. I didn't quite get that right. But we have for your viewing in the lobby. We are running these films continuously, so you can take a look at what it is local people are saying to local people in their own language. We have subtitles in French, but even if you can't read French, you can look at the films and get a good idea of what life is like in the corridor. So excuse all my faux pas here, but that is it, and I will entertain questions later. Next up, we're going to show you a presentation. My colleague from Kenya, our field coordinator from Kenya, Bahati, is going to talk to you about that experience.
Thank you. Thank you. And Terry's the PhD program manager at WWF.
Jambo, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bahati Mbura. I'm Kenyan. I've lived in Kenya all my life. I was born at a town called Malindi, and I hold a bachelor's degree in nursing, and I've worked as a nurse for the last 15 years. Well, about 1.5 years ago, I became the field coordinator for PhD project in Lamu called Kiunga Marine National Reserve. Well, that is a beach where a turtle goes to lay its eggs. Now it's going back to the sea within the marine. Now, as you can see here, the project Kiunga Marine National Reserve operates in 3 districts within the Coast Province. That is, we have Kiunga, we have Faza, we have Kizingitini in the mainland. And Kiunga is in the mainland, where there's the Dodori and Boni Reserve. As you can see, the Boni Reserve is this area here, where we have the Boni communities who live there, and they are basically hunters and gatherers. The project basically has a total population of about 21,000 people. And I know these communities fairly well because before I became the field coordinator for the project, I was working for the local Ministry of Public Health and Sanitation, where I was in charge of the nursing duties and also in charge of the reproductive health services. So I've worked with these communities for quite some time. Well, maybe I can tell you a bit about Lamu, where we have the archipelago, which is a string of islands, and it's got some very beautiful lagoons and estuaries. And working with this project has really increased my understanding and appreciation of the natural resources. Before that, I used to deal with the health of the people alone, and I could not appreciate what natural resources are there and how they are to be conserved. I used to concentrate on the health aspect alone. But since working with WWF in the last 1.5 years, it has really increased my understanding, and I really appreciate the natural resources that we have at the Kenyan coast. Well, the Lamu archipelago has got a lot of islands and is full of mangrove forests, is full of turtles, and is home to a total of about 1,500 species of fish, whales, dolphins, and dugongs. Dugongs are sea mammals, and also we have many sea turtles there. The project, the PHE project, works in partnership with Kenya Wildlife Service and also the fisheries services to preserve these species. For example, that is a dugong. This is a dugong. And that is a Kenya Wildlife Service site within the project, and that is a whale. Well, we have these partners who help us in conserving this rich ecosystem. Okay, the PHE project started in 2003, where it used to run in one hub, that is the Kiunga in the mainland. But then later, in 2008, the PHE Alliance project expanded to these two other geographical sites where we have the Kizingitini hub and the Faza hub, which are islands. And then we have been integrating the health and family planning services and provision of health waters into the conservation programs, at least to demonstrate to these people that we care about them as well as the environment, and also to show them the synergies that exist between the health issue and the environment issue. And here, as you can see, I was giving a community reproductive health package to the community members. These are people we have trained as community health workers in community strategy, where they are in charge of households. They visit households and give information and refer to the health facilities. Well, there are quite some challenges working in these areas. One of them is the remoteness of this place. To reach this place, you have to navigate along vast water expanses, and most of the times the rough is very, very sea. The sea is very rough, and as you can see, those are boats that are operated by wind only. They are not motorized, and it becomes difficult to reach places most of the time. We only use the project boats which are motorized. We also work in conjunction with the local Ministry of Health, but they have no capacity to have motorized boats. So normally we work in partnership with them to supply resources into the health facilities and also commodities. Another challenge which we have there is the high growth population rate of about 3.5%. That is annual. That is the Kenya's population growth also at 3.5%, which is among the highest in East Africa. And basically, these families in the project area, they value large families. Most of them are predominantly Muslim and Bajunis and people of Arab ancestries, and they really value large families. So it is a challenge as this population grow, the land is not growing, so there's a lot of pressure on the natural resources. Another challenge we are facing there is the drought, which is currently there. For about 1.5 years now, it has never rained there. And it's very, very dry at the moment. And you realize that about 80% of these people normally rely on the sea resources. But now, because of the drought, almost 98% of them are depending only on the sea resources, leading to overfishing and then depletion of the sea resources. And also the water sources have dried. Like you can see here, this is a dry waterbed. It has totally dried. It looks like it's green, but it's totally dry and it's cracked. There is no water, and people are just buying water from vendors for drinking. Otherwise, the water for other services, they use the sea water. So what is another challenge which I can point out is the security issue at the moment, because the Kiunga National Reserve is just at the border with Somalia. So due to its proximity, there's a security problem there. So what have we done as a project to work around these challenges? One, we have tried to improve the maternal and child health services. And these ones, first of all, we have tried to make the health services accessible to these people. First of all, this is a health facility where this facility was built by the project, and a health staff there is giving family planning services to this woman. Also, we have offered mobile outreaches every month to reach these hard-to-reach places where it's not accessible, because the road network there is also bad, and in most of the places you find that mobile networks are not there at all. So it's very hard to reach these places. We have also tried to improve transport for health, especially in the remotest place. For example, these are project boats, which we use for transporting emergency cases such as maternity services, because most of them, they cannot access transport when they have emergencies, such as if a mother needs a cesarean section, she cannot access any health services. So we use the boat to transport them from where they are into a hospital where they can get those services. And I can tell a small story there. With the project boat, we have been able to save a number of mothers. And to that effect, there's a village in Kiunga where we have several children who have been named after project staff. That's their local way of appreciating of what the project has done for them. And there are so many, more than 10 children there. You go there, you find this one is called Bahati, this one called Salim, this one. So they really appreciate, because otherwise they cannot access. If it's the boats, the small boats operated by wind, it cannot reach when the sea is very rough. So the project has also assisted in transporting the logistics, family planning, and the equipments to the health facilities. And we have also trained the government health workers to capacity build them to provide quality health services. Okay, we have also tried to improve the quality of the drinking water by securing and covering the water sources, as you can see here. And so by doing this, the water is safe and free from contamination. And this water, also using the community health workers whom we have trained, they chlorinate these wells every month. And then after that, after 3 months, water samples are taken to government chemists where they are tested for any contamination. And this has really helped in reduction of the diarrhea cases in the project area. We have also tried to promote community cleanup of beaches. And this one we have done through the community health workers whom we have trained. And we have health action days in every village where they come together and clean up the beaches for fish landing sites, such that there is no contamination of the fish and the health of the people is improved. Okay, also, we have also tried to advance the conservation work with the fisher folk. We talk to them about health and family planning and how they are related into management of fisheries. As I've pointed out, we have prevented diarrhea cases among children, especially during the drought. We have been using the community health workers to give chlorine tablets to the people after they have purchased the water from the vendors, because they have to chlorinate it again, and it has reduced diarrhea among the children to a very high percentage. A few results I can point out: that 1% of the births now they are attended by skilled birth attendants. That is high from 24% from the baseline survey which we did. Now it is at 31%. And that is a great improvement, because at first we used to lose a lot of mothers in a year, 20s in a region, but it has reduced. And last year, I think we lost 10 mothers. And this year, up to this time, we have lost 3 mothers. So it's a big improvement on that due to the project interventions. And also 78% of the water resources are regularly treated with chlorine, and this is up from 57%. In spite of the drought, it has increased to 78%. And also, the women now who can reach family planning services, be it at a health facility or mobile, using mobile outreaches, it has risen to 97% from 89% in the baseline. So there's a marked improvement in most of those indicators which we have worked on. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. We're now going to hear from Bhaskar Bahadare, who's the PHE, or Population Health Environment Project Coordinator at WWF Nepal.
this. Sorry. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to my presentation, Linking Human and Environment Health in Nepal, an experience of Population Health and Environment Alliance project in Tarai Arc Landscape Program area. My name is Bhaskar Bhattarai, and for the past 3 years, I have been the field coordinator of PHE project in southern Nepal, known as the Tarai. I am myself from the Tarai and from a small town, Mahendranagar, that is in far western end of the Tarai Arc in Nepal, right next to India. I have a master's in population studies in 2001, and since then I have been involved in teaching and in different projects, and since last 3 years I have been working in WWF. Tarai Arc includes the southern border of Nepal and the northern border of India, and extends from the farthest point west in Nepal to the farthest point east. Its total distance is approximately 19,100 square mile, which is about twice the size of state Maryland in US. This is our project area, Tarai Arc Landscape Project Area, and we are working in 3 districts. That is in Bardia. You can see this is the Bardia Khata corridor, this is the Basanta corridor, and this is the Lamai bottleneck. In these 3 areas, we are working in PHE project has been implemented, and these 3 areas are biologically very sensitive areas because the corridors are connecting the 2 protected areas of India and Nepal, and bottleneck itself is the very critical area, as it is going to be the connection is going to be break because of the human encroachment in the forest. The Tarai is unique in that it contains habitat and species within grassland, tropical forest, and wetlands. At the centerpiece of WWF's works are the forests, particularly the forest corridors that link the 11 protected areas that shelters endangered tigers, elephants, and rhinos. These corridors are to allow these animals to move and breed, but in many places they are degraded. WWF is working to restore corridors that are degraded and protect those forests that are in good shape. But there are several challenges to accomplish this work. This is the picture of Shiva Community Forest and managed by the community itself. These are the rhinos are started living there in community forest, and this is itself an opportunity and a threat to the community, as it is very hard to save the rhinos from the poachers and smugglers. Like the major challenge, big challenge, is the rapid population growth in Tarai. The Tarai is the most populous area of the country with more than 7 million people. This is due both to natural increase and migration. The average household size is 8.3 compared to the 5.3 for the nation as a whole. The population is increasing faster, almost a percentage point faster than the country as a whole. As in country, it is around 2.1% per annum, whereas in Tal area, it is 2.9% per annum. Another challenge is that the 90%, more than 90% of people have agriculture-related jobs. Southern Nepal is the breadbasket of the country, and more than 90% of the people rely on agriculture for their livelihoods and on their own small farm plots. Pressure on forests comes from their conversion to farms or degradation through cattle grazing and excessive use as a fuel for cooking. Unless control these forms of landscape destruction not only threaten the wildlife, but can become a downward self-reinforcing cycle that depletes the natural resources based upon which people's livelihood depends. Another threat is poverty and poor sanitation. There are out of 4 people, 3 out of 4 people earn less than $2 per day in Nepal, and at project area, in baseline survey, we observed that around 71% gave birth without assistance from a skilled health worker. Another problem is water is often contaminated by naturally occurring arsenic or bacteria, which is highly harmful to health when consumed regularly. Open defecation was very common. In one district, that is in Dang, we observed in baseline, it was practiced by 85% of households. The people of Tarai are WWF's partners in conservation, and it cares about solving their health problems because everyone has a right to good health and because people's health is so closely linked to the health of the environment itself. In spite of these all challenges in Tarai area, WWF have its clear landscape goal, that is to safeguard and restore forest corridors and protected areas so that wildlife and endangered species can move through them safely and breed successfully. And another is improve the health and economic prospectus of the people through their active involvement in restoring and safeguarding the forest and their ecosystems. This is also the picture from Tarai of Bardia National Park of Nepal. Tiger with 4 of its cubs. To achieve the goals that we set for the Tarai Art Landscape area, we have approached the integrated approach, and it helped community group better manage the forest. It works with the partners or the community forest users groups and help them to plant trees, promote sustainable forest management, and involve them in different community-based anti-poaching operations. And these groups are called community forest user groups or CFUGs. In PHE working area, we are working with 125 community forest user groups, which has approximately 123,000 people as members. The another approach is that we gave PHE project implementation responsibilities to the umbrella organization of these community groups. Each of these three districts, and these umbrella organizations are known as the Community Forest Coordination Committee. And they are expanding distribution of contraceptives in communities through youth and adult female community health volunteers, youth peer educators, and adult peer educators. They are also supporting peer educators to conduct household to encourage both preventive health and conservation behaviors and practices. These peer educators are conducting the behavior change communication classes for their peers twice in a month. And they are also approaching the newly married couples of youth. They have designed a letter, that is the congratulation letter to newly married couple. They send the letter that congratulations for your newly married couple life and wish you all the best, but at least you have to know some things before entering your married life, and this that you should not give birth a child before age of 20, and for the maternal health these things are to be done, and for the better quality of life these things are to be done. They have made the letter and they are sending to those of their peers who are newly married. Through the project, we built the arsenic-free water pumps, and we are providing filters that is called the biosand filters to households to remove arsenic and some extent of bacteria also. These are the high-quality hand pumps that we installed in project area. Actually, this project area are the flood-affected areas also, and during the flood time or rainy season, these hand pumps are not affected because they are in quite height, and the rainy water cannot re-enter the hand pumps and cannot contaminate those. And these are very high, deep bore hand pumps. More than, sometimes these are the 160 feet, 70 feet, 200 feet deep, so that the water is quite free from arsenic and bacteria. We provided loans to build biogas digesters linked to latrines, and indoor smokeless stoves that we called improved cooking stove ICS through Community Forest Coordination Committee supported microcredit facilities. Each Community Forest Coordination Committee has its microcredit system, that is we call cooperative, and through cooperative we give loans to the community members to install this biogas and for their IGA activities, income generating activities too. This is the biogas supported by the project, which reduces the pressure on forests, because if biogas is installed properly and used properly, it saved 6.5 metric ton fuel wood per year. And it doesn't produce smoke. That's why it is very good for the health, as the major health problem in Nepal is acute respiratory infection for children. It is still the major cause of child death in Nepal. So it helped in that aspects also. Not only reducing the pressure in forests, but also helping in health. We are supporting the existing health post and sub-health post, government sub-health post and sub-health post through the project, and we are promoting those health posts and sub-health posts to improve their reproductive health services. We have also, out of 3 sites, in one side we have developed a health post as a birthing center, and we provided them the equipment to establish them as a birthing center and to raise the facilities, the reproductive health, maternal and child health related facilities. And with these approaches, we have very wonderful results, that the contraceptive use increased by 6%. We observed in baseline it was 60%, and now in 2011 in airline it is observed to 66%. Besides that, the knowledge, people's awareness of at least 3 methods of modern family planning methods increased from 81% to 98%, and their use, as I told you, 6% raise. Maternal and child health improved. The percent of birth attended by skilled birth attenders rose from 29% to 68%. Support for wildlife conservation increased from 59% to 94% of households in the target population, and 85% of households attributed their positive attitude changes to increased access to health services and safe drinking water. The percentage of households using energy efficient cooking techniques increased from 8% to 32%. That is the 24% increment. All else being equal, such use subsequently reduces pressure on using forest as an energy sources and the amount of carbon in the atmosphere. That I already told, that one improved cooking stove saved the 1.5 metric ton fuel wood per year, and one biogas saved the 6.5 metric ton fuel wood per year. The proportion of household with no toilet facility or practicing open defecation declined in all districts. The proportion of household using biogas attached toilet increased by between 4% and 36% across districts. That is from 2% to 7% in Dang, 7% to 18% in Bardia, and from 21% to 57% in Kailali. The use of increase in biogas attached toilet is increased in a sense that those who have no toilet at their home because of poverty or due to many reasons they have no toilet, they are using the toilet of their neighbors, that is biogas attached toilet, and the neighbors also allow them to use their toilet because it is useful for them. When they use the toilet, it can be useful to produce the gas. Yeah. And we have some reflection from the
के साधन हो और एमबा पुरुष इनके और महिला उनके साधन ई परिवार नियोजन के साधन प्रयोग करने से हमार गर्भ रोगट और गुणस्तरीय जीवन में सुधार देखे।
यसमा यो कक्षामा सिकेर तपाईलाई चाहिँ के आफूलाई के फाइदा भएको छ जस्तो लाग्छ?
स्वास्थ्यमा सुधार आयो, यो गाउँमा परिवर्तन आयो, सरसफाइको यो वनजङ्गलको कुरा थाहा भयो। प्रत्येक हप्ता शनिबारको दिन सरसफाइ गर्छौँ बाटो, अनि प्रत्येक घरमा चर्पीहरू बनाउने भनेर भने गाउँमा
त्यसबाट बनाएको नि त मान्छेहरूले?
बनाएको गर्छौँ।
त्यो कुराहरू गएर आफ्नो परिवारमा चाहिँ परिवार नियोजनका साधनका कुराहरू पनि छलफल गर्न सक्नुहुन्छ तपाईँ?
सक्छौँ सर।
उनीहरूले के भन्छ, त्यो कस्तो प्रतिक्रिया दिन्छन्? लाज मान्दैन?
कहाँ लाज मान्छन्, झन् राम्रो मान्छन्।
जथाभावी नजानेर रातिसम्म यताउता नघाउने अनि अर्काको के अरे श्रीमानसँग नलाग्ने के भनेर सिकाएको छ हामीले। त्यो म्याडमले कतानको म्याडम आएको थियो यहाँ, अनि यस्तो यस्तो
धेरै बच्चा नजन्माउने
धेरै बच्चा नजन्माउने रे सानो परिवार सुखी परिवार भनेर सिकाउनु भयो।
तपाईँहरूले चाहिँ त्यसमा परिवार नियोजनको साधनहरूको कुरा पनि गरेर सिकाउनु भएको थियो। त्यसबाट के प्रभाव परेको थियो त? महिलाहरू राम्रोसँग सुन्थे, त्यसबाट प्रयोग गर्थे कि उनीहरू लाज मान्ने या नसुन्ने के थियो त्यस्तो?
पहिले चाहिँ योभन्दा पहिले चाहिँ लाज मान्ने गर्दथे, तर मैले क्लास चलाउँदै यसले धेरै प्रभाव गर्यो। लाज पनि कम मान्छन् र तिनीहरूले हाम्रो पनि अधिकार हो भनेर पुरुषहरूसँग तिनीहरू आफ्नो अधिकारको कुरा गर्छन्।
अब पहिलाको जुन यो पिएचई कार्यक्रम लागू हुनुभन्दा पहिला त्यति जनचेतनामूलक कार्यक्रमहरू भएको थिएन। अब जुन किसिमबाट हाम्रो यहाँ जनसङ्ख्या स्वास्थ्य तथा वातावरण कार्यक्रमले जुन किसिमले गर्नुपर्ने हो संरक्षण, त्यसमा चाहिँ गुणात्मक रूपमा वृद्धि भएको देखिन्छ। हाम्रो यो पिएचई कार्यक्रमले गर्दाखेरि जुन किसिमबाट यहाँ सञ्चालन भएको छ र यहाँ वृक्षारोपण पनि भएको छ उहाँहरूको सक्रिय सहभागितामा।
यसमा अब स्वयंसेविकाहरूलाई पनि एकदम बढी नै होइन, अब वन समुदायको बारेमा अनि घर आँगन वातावरणको बारेमा पनि उहाँले सरसफाइको बारेमा पनि स्वास्थ्य शिक्षा दिनुभएको छ। स्वास्थ्य क्षेत्रमा भनौँ न, अब आमा समूह बैठकहरू, स्वयंसेविका कार्यक्रमहरूतिर पनि अब किशोर किशोरीहरूको भनौँ सानो अवस्थामा विवाह गर्ने जुन थियो नि हाम्रो, त्यो अब अहिले यो वन समुदाय कार्यक्रमहरू जसले जनसङ्ख्याले तिनीहरूलाई अति नै होइन जनचेतना बढा जस्तो अलिक ढिलो बिहा गर्नुपर्छ र ढिलो बच्चा पाउनुपर्छ भन्ने कुराहरू अलिक बढी भएको छ। यस कार्यक्रमले जस्तो धेरै सहयोग गर्नुभएको छ। जस्तो यो डेलिभरीको लागि सक्सन मसिनहरू, डेलिभरी सेटहरू, अनि डेलिभरी बेडहरू होइन, अनि सम्पूर्ण उहाँहरूले दिनुभएको छ र धेरै हामीलाई सहयोग गर्नुभएको छ। जहाँ बर्थिङ सेन्टर नहुँदाखेरि हाम्रो महिनामा 7 जना 8 जना 9 जना हुन्थ्यो भने बर्थिङ सेन्टर भइसकेपछि र हाम्रो हजुरहरूले दिएको सामग्री पनि भएको हुनाले त्यो सामग्रीले हामीलाई पनि काम गर्न धेरै सजिलो भयो र प्रत्येक महिनाको हाम्रो 27-28 डेलिभरी केस भइरहेको छ।
Thank you. We're now going to have Kara Hanzak, the PhD Senior Technical Advisor at WWF, conclude today's formal program.
Good afternoon. As Sandeep said, my name is Kara Honzak. I'm the Senior Technical Advisor for WWF's PHE program. And I know you've been sitting through a lot of presentations, so I'll try to keep this short, so we'll have time for questions. What I'd like to talk to you about quickly is just bring all the lessons together and then talk to you about our future steps in this program. So as Terry discussed right at the beginning of this program, we have a global program objective in addition to the activities that you heard taking place in our 3 field sites, and that is to document and promote successful PHE approaches in order to expand the reach of our PHE program. And I want to just tell you a quick anecdote about my own experience with the project in order to put this objective into perspective and make it a little less Washingtonian. I think this is an exciting objective, and it gave us a really exciting opportunity. 7 years ago, I started with WWF in a very similar capacity, but as a population and environment fellow. And one of the objectives of that program was to help bring family planning into a non-traditional sector, the conservation sector, in order to reach some of these very remote and isolated populations that had not been reached with family planning services. And I saw that as one of my objectives of my fellowship, and it was also one of the objectives potentially of our program. But before we scaled up these approaches, we really wanted to make sure that we knew what was the value for conservation, in addition to what some people might call the obvious. And so what we did is we started to conduct a review of conservation projects around the world that were undertaking these kinds of projects to see what sorts of successes they had had. And a few years later, just as my fellowship was ending, we were finding some really exciting results. We found that these approaches were helping to generate goodwill for conservation, or at least we had just a limited amount of evidence about that. We also found 2 other really important findings. One is that every single conservation practitioner we talked to who was undertaking these approaches said that they were hoping to empower women and that that was critically linked to their conservation goals. We also found that all of them were undertaking these approaches because they wanted to slow population growth in their areas. Unfortunately, there wasn't a lot of evidence to support these beliefs on behalf of conservation practitioners. So over the next few years, I made it a personal mission to improve that and have worked with a lot of people around this room to try to promote the lessons that we've learned in undertaking better M&E. And what was new about the PHE Alliance was that finally we had an integrated project strategy. We had resources to carry out comprehensive baseline and endline surveys where we could look at the P, H, and the E. And we had the ability, because of these surveys, to try to pilot some new indicators and look at things that we hadn't been able to look at before. So what did we find? Well, we think that we've got more evidence than ever before that PHE does in fact increase family planning use in remote places. As you've heard already, and I'm just going to bring it together quickly, in Kenya, where we have an Islamic community that's very conservative, we saw big increases in contraceptive use. We saw a lot of women who prefer to use the injectable method because they can do it by themselves without a lot of discussion. You can think about that what you will, but we think it's an achievement for family planning. We think it's an achievement for women, and there's still a long way to go to improve gender balance and relations. We've done great things in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, a place with absolutely no access. Now had, this statistic wasn't quoted to you before, 46% of this population, when we started, said they were interested in having access to modern contraception and didn't have access. So you can see that this is completely voluntary for those in the community that aren't sure how this works. And that's why we've got such big uptake. And you also saw in Nepal where, relatively speaking, use was already a lot higher. It went from 60 to 60% contraceptive prevalence rate. We also saw that we are improving conservation buy-in in some of these communities where we really desperately need to generate goodwill towards conservation. In the Terai Arc, back in 2003, I believe it was our landscape leader at the time who said that communities were not not entirely comfortable with what WWF's agenda was in the area and were concerned that we were mostly interested in working on protected areas issues. Well, now you can see that in this area we had an increase from 42% to 95% of households now say that they believe that wildlife conservation was important to their health and a healthy ecosystem. This is a profound achievement, and it's also a profound achievement in measurement, because that I know of, this has not been measured before. And finally, we found that this approach does empower women. We're still working on making the precise linkages and making better linkages to how that advances conservation. But just to give you a taste of some of the things we finally measured, we've seen increased participation of women in in the CFUG groups, which are the groups that manage natural resources in Nepal. We've also seen that in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, where we were simultaneously working, the WWF was working on land use planning, in addition to seeing improvements in the gender balance within health services delivery, where Terry said that we went from one community health worker to about 55, so a 50-50 balance. We also saw a transformation on land use planning, where they went from about 6 female participants to 1,100 female participants, which represents approximately 50% of the land use committee members. And Lisa Steele, who's with us today, might be able to shed some more light on how that works. But we're not trying to take credit for what happened under the land use planning process, but we think there may be something here that needs to be further investigated, and we'd really like to see what else can be done in the future. So what are we going to do with all of these exciting lessons? We want to expand the PHE program to more places where conservation and health priorities intersect. We had the opportunity under this project to conduct some exciting research with the academic sector, in which we took demographic and health survey data, some of the best data we think exists on population trends, and overlay it with our conservation priority areas at WWF. And these are outside for some of you to pick up. This is just a sample of the map that we have. And I've got a picture of it here. I don't know if you can hear me. This right here is the coastal East Africa area, and over here is what we call the Congo Basin. And where you see the red and orange areas is where unmet need for family planning is particularly high. That's where women have said already that they would like to space or limit their births. And so we would like to see expansion, a dramatic expansion in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. We may have the opportunity to do that. We'd like to roll out lessons about PHE. We've been able to, through this project, we've been able to replicate our manual for conservation practitioners. This is the French version, and we're going to be going to Dakar with this in just a few weeks. And we are hoping also to launch new programs in Mozambique and Cameroon that will be school-based and integrate PHND. And finally, there will be a new project in Nepal funded by Finnish money, which is not as integrated as some of the approaches you've seen here, but it is an integrated PHE project. We hope we will be able to continue to innovate and educate. We think we have played a key role in producing some of the evidence that has been used throughout Washington, especially, to provide information to government bodies that are making decisions about bringing more money into family planning, health, and particularly in the environmental sector. And finally, we hope that we will be able to continue to empower women and really keep looking deeper at how these linkages work, because we see a lot of exciting things here. And we did have the opportunity to do one case study. We had hoped to do a bit more, but one exciting result of this case study, this was done in Nepal by Nancy Diamond. Again, this is on one of the tables outside the door, is that Nancy Diamond looked at how we had already integrated gender into our program strategy, and she helped advise us on improving some of the measurements. She provided gender training to all of the different stakeholders in the Nepal project, and finally she designed a tool that can be used not only by PHE practitioners but also by the larger conservation field. And WWF has a gender policy, and we hope that we will play a key role in helping to roll out that gender policy. And I'm going to come close to my closing just with a quote from one of my favorite people, Wangari Maathai. I'm having some of the similar technical challenges here that everyone else is having. Sorry, we're on a Mac, which is why we're having this problem. Wangari Maathai recently passed away, and it's very sad for a lot of us in this room. She was a champion of women's rights and environmental conservation. And she said, "Throughout Africa, women are the primary caretakers, holding significant responsibility for tilling the land and feeding their families. As a result, they are often the first to become aware of environmental damage as resources become scarce and incapable of sustaining their families." I think it speaks for itself. And finally, we are excited about our strategy. We know it's ambitious, but we are very thrilled that we have just received one of our first ongoing grants for this program, which is for the Democratic Republic of the Congo for one more year of funding. It will help. One of the focuses of that project is to empower women using PHE approaches. And we hope that with some of the evidence we've presented to all of you here today, that you will help continue to support this program in each of your own ways as we move forward. And thank you from all of us.
Thank you, Kara. It was wonderful. Personally, I found to hear this historical context come from Scott and Tom, have country examples come from our esteemed colleagues on the panel, and then conclude with such a powerful note, especially one that includes women's empowerment, which is near and dear to my heart. So I thought we could open up the floor for questions. I imagine there's probably quite a few. I do want to point out that two of my colleagues are with mics. Please make sure to use them. We'd ask you to introduce yourself and your affiliation. As many of you know, we webcast our events, and without using a mic, our colleagues that are watching this online won't be able to hear. So I saw some, there's actually one right behind you, Kaylee, if that works.
Hi. Can you hear? Is this on?
Yes.
Hi, I'm John Pielemeyer. I'm an independent consultant and have been involved in evaluating PHE programs in a previous iteration. I wanted to ask whether there are any cost analysis of PHE approaches versus simply doing family planning or simply doing environment programs, and whether that makes a difference in terms of convincing donors to try to work with this integrated approach from any of your three sites. And a finding that we had found earlier on was that a lot of environment seemed to be valuable is a lot of the environment programs have long-term benefits to communities, but in the short term, they say the environment people just telling us don't do this and don't do that. They're just telling us no. But if we get something in the meantime to build trust with the groups, with the integrated groups that are providing the resources, and the short-term benefits are often in health and in family planning, they're willing to wait longer for the environmental benefits to come. And I'm not sure, I guess my question is whether you found any of those kinds of results in the study that you did, Kara, and your colleagues. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Okay, I'll just try to be brief in answering your questions. About the cost analysis, this is an issue, as you know, that has come up quite frequently. There were discussions at the beginning of our project trying to undertake some research on that, and we did not undertake that research. I will be frank. We did include an extremely rudimentary version of looking at costs when we did the value-added review, and there is finally, I know many people in this room who are familiar with some of the work I've been doing have been waiting to see that. It is on the outside table. There's a brief that summarizes the results, and if you're interested in the cost component, I'd be happy to share that with you in more detail. And then on building trust, I think I cited some of that, and I'm not sure if I'm clear on precisely the part of that that's of greatest interest to you, John. But I think that we were able to, one of the questions we were able to get into the Nepal survey was, And I understand it was actually, Bhaskar can speak to this, I understand it was actually quite difficult when they went into the field to ask this question. It was to something like, to what do you attribute your positive change in feelings towards conservation? I wrote the questions, but I believe me, it was better than that. And they had a discrete list of activities that they could pick from. Well, it was quite interesting to me, and I think to Bhaskar as well, that the top two choices were clean water and I believe it was. It was, it was this biogas and clean water services, which is why we came away with the conclusion that, yes, of course, reproductive health and family planning services are highly valued, but we know that water and basic health services are extremely valued. Hope that begins to answer your question.
Maybe we could take another.
Hi, and thank you so much for your presentations. My name is Althea Skinner, and I work with the WWF Care Alliance. I have a question for Bahati. You had said that one of the ways that you were achieving results was to speak with fishermen about the linkages between health, family planning, and fisheries management. I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about those linkages in the context of fisheries in particular.
Okay, thank you very much. One thing, we have formed groups on the fisheries management, which we call the beach management units. And among these people, we have included the community health workers. These people we have trained on health issues, and as they integrate with the fishermen in the beach management units, then we give them the information, and they scale up this information to their households on health, on family planning, and how important that if the population keep on growing, if these people are not practicing family planning, then there's going to be a lot of exertion on the natural resources, and these ones are not going to take up the population which keeps on growing. So we give them the interlinkages which exist between the population growth, the natural resources, and their management. Thank you.
Sky, maybe you could get one from this side of the room.
My name is Clive Mutunga from Population Action International. I think all the presentations point to a very good picture where all the sectors, not all, the three sectors, population, health, and environment, are coming together, despite the challenge that we normally encounter where the sectors are siloed at the national level. So probably I just wanted to pick your thoughts on how this has worked so wonderfully for PHE model, how you get the different ministries involved, let's say Minister of Health, Minister of Population Services, other government agencies like Kenya Wildlife Services in Kenya. And if there's so much momentum to the extent that governments, national governments or local authorities are able to commit their own funding to step up or to replicate and scale up the projects. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll take that. Okay, for example, in the Kenyan sector, we as WWF have been working in collaboration with the local Minister of Health because they are the major stakeholders in offering these health services. So in most of the cases, you find that there's a low funding for health services in Kenya, and as we work with them, we form like joint committees and we form joint planning meetings together where we come and plan these health services in the conservation entities, and we implement the strategies for the ministry in the conservation issues. So we implement activities together, and also there are some other partners whom we work in conjunction with. For example, AMREF organization, we've been working with them as partners in Kenya. They offer also maternal services and child health services, and also the fisheries management. We all come together and decide on the strategies that we want to follow to improve the health of the people as well as reduce the population pressures for the natural resources. That's what we do together.
Bhaskar, perhaps when you speak a little bit about governmental involvement, you can also talk about whether there's been any corporate involvement. We all know that we're here today hearing about these projects because of the wonderful contributions in Johnson & Johnson.
Thank you. PHE in Nepal, it is implemented through the Community Forest Coordination Committee, through TAL first. TAL itself is the government's program, and we are closely working with the government, Ministry of Forest, Department of Forest, and in health sector, the project is implemented through the Community Forest Coordination Committee. That are the community organization, community-based organizations, and they are coordinating with the district public health offices, the local offices, that is health posts, sub-health posts, and primary health centers. That are the local DPHO representatives there. And since they are in the same community, and the FCSBs, female community health volunteers themselves are the members in CFCC and members in Community Forest Users Group, that's why they are working in the close coordinations. And in each meeting of CFCC, the members from the health posts are also, they are also coming, and they are also participating and putting their issues there. And in the meetings of health posts, sub-health posts, the members from Community Forest Coordination Committee, they are also visiting and providing their support. And in some areas, those Community Forest Users Group who have their own income, because some Community Forest Users Group are rich in income because of their natural resources, so they are providing support, even staff support to the health posts, sub-health posts, and the primary health centers.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for a very nice presentation. I've been really looking forward to hearing the culmination of your project, to all of you. This is Linda Bruce. I'm the director of the Balance Project, and we also work on PHE. And my question to you is, because we work in a couple of countries on PHE, we also have some successes, but we also have challenges. So I would like to know from each one of you, what are some of the challenges that you faced?
Challenges. I could start with DRC, okay? Just about everything. As I said, isolation issues. Isolation issues are very important because it affects everything you do, trying to get into the area, trying to bring partners into the area, trying to move commodities and health services around the area. The very low health status that we're starting with, the fact that these people have been abandoned basically by the outside world. It's not just that they live in this corridor, it's that this, as I said before, this whole part of the Congo is being ignored by the government, of course, and by international donors. Maybe this is going to change. We're trying to make it change at this point with some of our fundraising efforts. And then, of course, there's this issue of how people survive. And they survive by living off the land. And that means practicing traditional agriculture, which encroaches upon the forest, hunting bushmeat because that's what they're used to doing, and emptying out the forest of wild animals. And because they haven't had the chance to think of new ways of doing things, of obtaining new technologies and living more in a more complementary fashion with their wonderful surroundings. They do what they do, and they will keep doing it until we can show them a different way, and we're well down that path. That's DRC.
Feedback from Kenya or Nepal?
Bahati, would you like to say something more about your challenges?
Yes, thank you. Okay, one thing which I had mentioned, I'd say that the geographical terrain of the project area is very bad. Most of it is covered by water, large expanse of waters, and transportation there is very, very difficult to reach to this place. Another thing which hinders most of these services is the culture and religion of the people. Most of them, they take the religion as an excuse for not practicing family planning, because they say Islam is against practicing family planning. But when you go around to them, you talk to them, most of them, they say no, they're just saying that for. So there's a lot of advocacy that is needed, especially with the men and the religious leaders. That is one of the major challenges which we face. And another challenge we face is the poor infrastructure of the place. For example, of the health services. You find that we are advocating for these people to go and deliver in the health facilities, but when they go there, there's no maternity room, there's no delivery space, so it's another big challenge on that one. And then another one on the challenge is the lack of other employment opportunities in the area, such that most or almost 80 or 90% of the people depend solely on the sea resources. So that is a major challenge for the conservation efforts. And then another thing we can say is about maybe poor government policies, because, for example, before that we used to have these community-based distributors for family planning. They used to distribute into the households, but then later it was cut off. So they are not distributing, and that has been a big challenge for the uptake of the family planning. That's what I can say for now. Thank you.
Okay, in Nepal, PHE is a new concept, and keeping alive the sense of this PHE concept in the project area, that is one of the major challenges. Still, the Department of Forest and for Department of Health, they have the PHE's new thing, and they are all of them have not accepted the concept of PHE yet, and this is also one of the challenges. And at the end of the project, we have encouraged some community forest users group to include the PHE concept in their operational plan, and they are supposed to at least initiate some PHE activities with their own, on their own fund. But the status of the community forest users group is not good of all those. So in that condition, it is, though however they have included the PHE in their operational plan, but it is very hard to implement in the field in real sense. That is also one of the challenge. And as I told, all the superior bodies or the seniors or the government personals, they are not as positive as for PHE, since it is a very new concept and we have done the project only for 3 years. In our project area, we could initiate so many things, but to keep these all things alive and continue, it is also a challenge.
Kara, did you want to end the challenges?
I'll just add just a little bit from a sort of a global perspective. Challenges that we've seen in all the areas, and I'm going to talk both about in the field as well as some of the things we see when we measure or when we strategize. Our staff retention has been a real challenge in all, not only at WWF, but of course also in the health sector, and it's true in the conservation sector as well. But that makes it even a 3-year project. I think we had turnover in all of our sites, major turnover, and trying to get people to understand integration is a real challenge already. So that makes it very hard. You know, it takes at least a solid year, I think, before people get integration and then really start applying it. So that's a challenge. And then also, you know, we conducted these fancy baseline and inline survey instruments, and it took several years just to get to the beginning of this project to design those instruments where they were already almost ready, supposedly. They're too complex still. They're too heavy. It's too much of a measurement burden, and we've got to work together as all across the fields and decide what really matters, and when are we going to say it's enough to measure just a few things and say that's enough information to move forward and say these are worthwhile end goals in and of themselves. It's enough to know that we've increased family planning use and know that the benefits that will be derived from that will follow, for example. And I think we need to come to some closure on that and stop saying that we don't have enough evidence. That's my opinion. And then, sorry, and and finally, I think it's hard in 3 years, as Bhaskar said. We saw some signs that make me concerned that sustainability can be an issue, especially with just a 3-year project. And that's all I'm going to say. Thanks.
Maybe we can take Jason.
Thanks for the presentations. It's really good to see the culmination of the last 3 years and of your adventuresome travels. This question is kind of hinted at by Kara in her discussion right there of the challenges, and you mentioned the challenge of retention and of people getting it at the program level. I guess this is also a question for Tom. How much do people here in WWF, now that you've had these exciting results, how much do they get it? And how much support do you see from colleagues for the type of work that you do?
I'd like to start on that. If you went around and counted heads on every floor and said, do you know, and do you support, I don't know what the answer would be. But when we work in the areas we work in coastal East Africa, and the people we work with in coastal East Africa, they get it, they appreciate it. The same in the Congo Basin. When we work, we've had 2 projects going. We hope to keep the 2 of them going, and they certainly get it. They're our biggest supporters. So I think from WWF, certainly, it's a big organization, it's a changing organization, but there is a lot of support, and the fact that we don't just deal with patrols anymore in national parks. We understand that in order to conserve an area, it becomes ultimately the responsibility of the people who live there to conserve that local area. And so this is just one way where we can show those people that we understand what that means. And that also means you can't be sick and take care of natural resources. So healthy environment, healthy people. So Kara, what would you say?
I feel like I'm talking a lot, but just quickly, I think that I have been on the project for 7 years, and I've seen a lot of changes. What you're talking about, Jason, is a major social movement in conservation and in society at large, I think, and so I think, like a lot of things, it goes up and it goes down, and it's not always the result of our individual efforts. I felt like we actually had made a lot of progress in the previous 5 years before this project. We saw that we'd gotten into the Living Planet report. We'd gotten some population information into the Living Planet report, a biannual publication put out by WWF, indicating there was more interest in population across the WWF network. We also saw that at the U.S. level and at the international level, our program was invited to contribute to what they called the population white paper. It was going to be a position paper until we realized that there was controversy across the network, and it was more useful because different countries had different political contexts to talk about the successes that each of us had achieved using different approaches to population issues. I think the addition of health to our program has been a big boon to us. I think it helps us be more flexible to the times, be more flexible to the needs of a particular place, and I think it's helped us make more headway in the conservation sector, and I'd be really curious to hear what Tom and Matt feel about that over on the other side of the table. I don't know.
Guy, perhaps we can get a mic over there.
Thanks, Kara. I don't think I have that much to add. I think we do get it. I think there is a question about getting it and being able to fund it that is relevant to this discussion. Within the context of our own organization, we have many priorities. We have many difficult choices to make, and that clearly plays into this issue. We are spread out as an organization. We have an ambitious global agenda, so the degree to which we can bring the adequate resources to this level of effort really depends on our ability to clearly understand this as a priority, our ability to reach other partners and bring them into that, and those two things. And I think we are at, in some ways, early days of being able to do that, and it is a conservation requires integration of a lot of areas, and I think that is one of the challenges we face to bring conservation into a community and a development context where we need to think about issues like health, gender, rights-based approaches, etc. So I think we get it. I think there's a strong case to be made that we get it more when you're in the field and you're in the context of the field where it's readily apparent than it is necessarily in the halls of Washington.
So I actually think that we're going to have to conclude the formal Q&A, but I do want to point out and encourage us to continue the dialogue. There's a reception that follows the event today. I also want to encourage everybody to log on to the wilsoncenter.org website under the ECSP program to perhaps download a focus that we issued fairly recently that talks about efforts in Nepal that you heard about. There are hard copies out in the front as well, and I'd also encourage you to check out our blog, newsecuritybeat.org. And thank you to all of our speakers, and thank you to all of you for the wonderful dialogue, and I just want to sincerely thank you.